There is a lot of anger and the blame that is being placed on the inner circle of advisors and family members around the president. And what these people say is this really painstakingly choreographed and stage managed daily operations at the White House around the president that is set up specifically designed to prevent the public from often seeing the president in these extended, unscripted settings. And one thing that many of the folks that we spoke with that they are so furious about is this idea that when people have gone to these inner circle of advisors around the president to express some of these concerns, that they were not taken seriously or really brushed aside. This is what one top Democrat told me. They said everyone who expresses any level of suspicion or contrary views, they call everyone and they beat the shit out of them and say, stay on message. Now, it is not just the inner circle of advisors that is getting a lot of this heat. It is also members of the president's family who, of course, have been up there, really standing by the president's decision to so far stay in this race.
A few moments later.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about Biden's big boy press conference that was supposed to relieve all concerns that the Democrats, the mainstream liberal media, the cackling hens, the liberal propagandists had about Joe Biden's mental health. And let's just say Joe Biden did not have a great day from start to finish. And you know this because at the end of the day, Rachel Maddow was fact-checking Joe Biden on an insane claim that he made during his big boy press conference that there are no polls showing that he can't beat Trump or that he has no chance of beating Trump.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that. Okay. Thank you.
This ends tonight's press conference.
I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway,
I think that what Nicole points out about the reality about polling numbers for incumbent presidents and the real history of that versus what President Biden said, which was not actually factually accurate as far as I can tell. That's worrying because it makes me worry that the president is being given information about his political standing that may not be based in reality, that may be sunnier than is real.
It started pretty bad with some bad news. Bombshell report from CNN reveals Biden cabinet secretary submitted questions ahead of pre-scripted meetings with president. Okay, so Biden is having pre-scripted meetings with his cabinet secretary. So his secretaries have to submit questions to Joe Biden ahead of the meeting so that Joe Biden could be prepared to answer their questions, even though he is president of the United States. So he's not actually having real substantive policy conversations with his cabinet secretaries. He's actually getting his answers from his team, which means that he's not actually running the country, which could explain this statement from Joe Biden during his big boy press conference, where he basically said that he answers to the commander in chief, even though he is the commander in chief.
I'm following the advice of my commander in chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people.
Yeah, so Biden's not running anything, okay? He's not running anything at all, okay? But the number one thing that we learned today is that everything about the Biden administration is scripted, okay? Even the meetings with his cabinet secretaries are scripted, just like we found out that his interviews with the liberal media are also scripted, even though everybody already knew that they were scripted. But not only are they scripted, they're also edited at the request of the campaign team, like the Biden campaign, saying, hey, it wasn't just enough for you to, script the interview where I just came in with the answers already. No. You have to edit out parts of the interview in which Biden goes off script, which is apparently what they asked a Milwaukee radio station to do when Biden was on his tour to prove that everything is fine.
After President Biden called in for a radio interview, one of these interviews done to kind of quell concerns and show the president was fine and completely on point. After he did that call, the Biden campaign called that station asking them to edit out 2 of his answers. Civic Media, Wisconsin Progressive Talk Radio Network, acknowledged that staff took out the Biden campaign's suggested edits, deleting 2 answers from the president's July 3rd interview with host Earl Ingram. The first answer is Biden said, quote, I have more blacks in my administration than any other president, all other presidents combined, and in major positions, cabinet positions. Obviously not an accurate thing to say. The second, when Biden was talking about Trump's past comments about the Central Park Five, and we should note, like, this is a big journalism no editing out an answer because the politician in his campaign didn't like it, or they didn't like how he came across. I don't know exactly the reason. We'll find out from the Biden campaign maybe someday.
Yeah, so Biden started off today of his big boy press conference getting humiliated, and essentially that is what happens throughout the rest of the day, because as the day goes, Biden just continues to mess up, right, in one way or another. Like, for example, at the NATO summit, Biden apparently was late enough that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni decided to openly mock Joe Biden being late. Yeah, so the liberal media journalists would say that Biden is a better statesman than Trump because he is well liked. Well, I think that it is more important to be respected than liked, because what you just saw there was not respect for Joe Biden. Okay, I also don't think she likes Joe Biden either, but she definitely does not respect Joe Biden to be openly mocking Joe Biden while waiting for him, right? I don't see world leaders treating Trump that way, and I don't think they would treat Trump that way because, you probably shouldn't mess with Trump like that, right? I mean, I'm just saying, this guy has access to the nukes, okay? Which is something that Putin and Xi are well aware of, okay? They're well aware that Trump has access to the nukes and he's willing to use the nukes, okay? So they don't F with Trump, but they do F with Biden. And what I mean by F with Biden, that means that they are willing to invade other countries and to do things that are antagonistic towards the United States of America that they would not be willing to do if Trump was in office. They're doing that now under Joe Biden. That is how the invasion of Ukraine happened. And world leaders know that Biden is weak. And part of the reason why Biden is weak is because he is lost. He's so lost that apparently he got Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin mixed up at the NATO summit when it was his time to introduce Vladimir Zelensky. Take a look.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, so humiliation. Total humiliation before the so-called big boy press conference can even start. Again, there was not a worst possible way for this day to start for Joe Biden, okay? Like, this is terrible. It's an absolute disaster. Such a disaster that a Democrat came out and said that Biden should resign. Now, the way that this Democrat worded her demands of Joe Biden is in a way that you can easily interpret as she's not only calling for Joe Biden to not run again, not run for re-election, but also to resign immediately, okay? Let's read here. A sitting House Democrat became the first to suggest President Joe Biden should resign from office in a stunning statement. Rep. Marie G. Perez of Washington said ahead of Biden's highly anticipated press conference Thursday that she has doubt about his health and fitness to do the job following his disastrous debate 2 weeks ago. Perez also said she has concerns about whether he is actually the one making important decisions about our country rather than unelected advisors. Yes, I love this. And the reason why I love this is because that is what people should be concerned about. You have unelected advisors that are making the decisions. This guy is not even having like legitimate meetings with his cabinet secretaries, right? It's all scripted, which means that this dude is being told what to do. This man is literally being controlled. And this is the thing about these people who are supporting Biden. You're not supporting Biden. You're supporting his advisors. Whoever is controlling him, his advisors, who knows? Maybe his advisors have somebody controlling them too. I'm not entirely sure. You don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. You have no clue who is running the country. It is very unpatriotic to support something like that, right? If you support Joe Biden, like, you are unpatriotic. Like, I'm so serious. Because there's nothing democratic about that, right? Like, you elected a guy, the people elected a guy, he's not running the country. Like, he's not aware. Everything is scripted. He's being told what to do. Like, it doesn't matter what Joe Biden actually believes. What matters is what his team believes. And nobody knows what his team believes because they're not accountable to anybody. That is a problem. It is a huge problem. And that's why these people who are voting for Joe Biden, despite knowing this is why they're called Blue Anon. They're a cult. It's a cult. Quote, the crisis of confidence in the president's leadership needs to come to an end. The crisis of confidence in the president's leadership needs to come to an end. Basically, what she's saying is that Joe Biden, at the very least, needs to not attempt to get reelected, or he needs to step down. I think this is worded with this kind of vagueness for a reason, right? It's open to interpretation. But yes, Joe Biden, the right thing to do would be for him to resign. He should resign. The president should do what he knows is right for the country and put the national interest first. Okay, so again, more Democrats are going after Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden showed up an hour late to his big boy press conference, okay? And it started off with a bang because the media curiously asked Joe Biden about his VP, Kamala Harris, because there's speculation that Kamala Harris could be taking over for Joe Biden. And he was asked about his confidence in Kamala Harris taking over because nobody actually believes that Kamala can run the country. And Joe Biden, once again, absolutely humiliated himself in the opening question of the big boy, Joe gonna set him straight press conference.
What concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one.
Yeah, so apparently Biden thinks that Trump is his vice president, and that, along with the slip up of thinking that Volodymyr Zelensky is actually Vladimir Putin, it didn't really matter what Joe Biden said in the rest of his press conference, even though, again, it didn't go too bad for Joe Biden, to be quite honest with you. But overall, it was a disaster just because he basically ruined it before the press conference could even start. And when the press conference opened, he ruined it again by calling Kamala Harris Trump. So now it doesn't matter what Joe Biden says throughout the rest of this press conference because everybody saw and heard what they heard. So Joe Biden can assure us all he wants that he's good to go. But I really don't think that it's going to work after those two major slip-ups to start the big boy press conference that, by the way, Joe Biden had a teleprompter and also he had a note telling him who to call on for questions that probably were pre-scripted.
Past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams, and you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good.
Yeah, so Biden says he's good, although nobody believes that he's good. And the reason why is because the press asked Joe Biden about his 2 major gaffes before this press conference ended, and this is what Joe Biden had to say.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, and the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean, Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is, well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, so here's the problem, okay? Joe Biden's press conference, again, overall, most of it was just okay. Now, keep in mind, the standards aren't very high here, okay? Joe Biden just has to make it through it without a Mitch McConnell moment. That's really what he has to do because he hasn't had his Mitch McConnell moment yet, okay? He's been close. He's been very close, but he hasn't had one yet. The Mitch McConnell moment is the moment where everybody's going to collectively say, what the F? And it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. Everybody is going to come together and say, yeah, this dude, he has to step down. Like, just for the sake of the country, like, he has to go. He cannot serve. He cannot be president. 25th Amendment would legitimately be on the table, okay? It would be a bipartisan thing, which is possible, guys. I know it's hard to imagine, but there are Democrats that want Joe Biden to step down. And if enough of them want Joe Biden to step down to resign, then you also have Republicans as well, too, who low-key don't want Joe Biden to resign, right? So, again, that may be a messy situation. But, again, the Mitch McConnell moment would be so bipartisan, people would just be like, okay, nah, like, this dude just can't serve. He can't be president. Hasn't happened yet. But Democrats are afraid, they're scared to death that it will happen. In fact, some Democrats are hoping that it happens sooner rather than later so that Biden can go ahead and drop out. However, because it didn't happen and because Biden held up for most of the press conference, this is actually the worst case disaster scenario for the Democrats because Biden can continue to try to stay in. He can continue to say, hey, listen, I went out there and I did that press conference and I was fine for most of the press conference. Yeah, I made a few mistakes, but it's not that big of a deal. That's a disaster scenario for the Democrats because now it drags out the process even further. if Joe Biden would have absolutely laid an egg, which don't get me wrong, he got close. I mean, calling Kamala Harris Trump, yeah, you're getting pretty close to laying an egg. But he recovered a little bit, enough so that he can continue to justify staying in the race and to keep pushing back. It doesn't mean that he ultimately will be successful. It just means that Joe Biden is going to survive for now. Okay, but those two moments that happened before the press conference and during the press conference definitely tanked any chance of the press conference making Democrats calm down, right? They're still going to be panicking. They're still going to be pushing for him to resign, to step down, to drop out. They're still going to be having meetings, okay? That's what's going to happen. It's not really going to change much. It just buys him a little bit of time. But again, the problem with that is that it delays Joe Biden dropping out of the race, which delays the next candidate, whoever that may be, Kamala, from taking over and go ahead and campaigning, right? If they're going to switch, they got to do it sooner rather than later. They just can't wait around for Joe Biden to decide what he's going to do, because Joe Biden's going to convince himself that he still got it, right? That he's the only person that can beat Trump, because Democrats were gassing him up, getting his head big, telling him that after 2020. And look what it's caused. Joe Biden thinks that he had some type of divine mandate to beat Trump, right? He's the only person that can beat Trump. Again, it's a hero complex that was created by the Democrat Party around Joe Biden. And lo and behold, that's backfiring on Democrats, because that's the reason why Joe Biden doesn't want to step down. He may legitimately believe that he's the only person that can beat Trump. And the only reason that he believes they can beat Trump is because he's old and senile, and he buys into the garbage and propaganda that his handlers tell him to keep him going, right? Because it seems as if Joe Biden's on his last legs. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.